Hey guys, welcome back. So in today's video, I am going to be doing something very laid back and more of like an educational based video. I was going to film a makeup tutorial today, but I realized my camera was not charged. I forgot to charge it. So I decided to just go pretty natural today, like no mascara or anything, do like a very no makeup type of look and just sit down very casual and do more of an educational based talk through video. So I got a request to do a video on basically like undertones and just like talking about foundation in general, and I thought that was a really good idea because when thinking about foundation, it can be very overwhelming because there are so many like textures and finishes and different types of foundation like coverages and like all of that. So if you're new to wearing makeup, or if you're not very educated on the different types of foundation, it can be very overwhelming. And when I was working at Sephora, I feel like a lot of my time that I was there throughout the day, people would come in and most of the time they would say, I'm looking for a new foundation, I need help finding one because I have no idea where to begin. I just don't know much about foundation, or I need something new and I just don't know where to start. So I figured it'd be a perfect video because I can definitely tell you that foundations, there is so much to it, so it can be definitely overwhelming. So in this video, I'll talk more about, like undertones and how to determine your undertone and different like finishes and textures. Yeah, I have my notes ready, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, so then first I'm gonna go ahead and talk about your undertones and how to establish that, and then the different undertones if you're not familiar with that. So as far as undertones go, and I have my little notepad right here, so the undertones is just the color under your skin, and it generally is going to like show through the skin. So you're going to see like your undertone basically like on the surface of your skin, so you can kind of tell when looking at somebody what their undertone is if you have like an eye for that. So the different undertones are, there's red undertones, so that's going to be more cool or more pink undertones. There's neutral undertones, so that's going to be like a mixture of red and yellow. And then there are yellow undertones, so that's going to be more warm and golden. Now, undertones don't necessarily go with one skin tone or another, so you can be pretty fair. That doesn't mean that you're going to be necessarily like a cool tone. You can still have warmer or more like yellow-based undertones with being really fair. Same with being deeper in skin tone. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be warmer. You can also have like cool or red undertones if you're deeper in skin tone as well. So skin tone really doesn't have anything to do with your undertone of the skin. And it's really important to narrow down your undertone just because there are so many different undertones with foundations. So if you have more of like like a warmer undertone and you wear something too pink, then it's just going to be obvious and the tone isn't going to look right on your face. It's just going to look too like red or too pink on you. And then same if you have more of like cool undertones and you wear something that's too warm, then it's just going to make you look yellow. I always said that like a good thing that I would do is start somebody with like more of like a neutral undertone, because then if it shows up to pink on the skin, then you would more than likely need to use something that's a little warmer. Now if you're trying like a neutral undertone foundation and it turns out too yellow on the skin, then that's a good indicator that you need to go a little bit more on the pinker side or the cool tone side. So that's what I would do whenever I would help somebody with a foundation with matching them when I was at Sephora, is I would start in the middle with a neutral and then see how that looked and then go either which way, depending on how the neutral undertone looked on their skin. And then to determine whether or not, like if you can tell like a foundation looks pink or yellow, it's pretty easy to tell. Like if you hold the bottles up next to each other, you can generally see if something looks a little bit more pink versus yellow. But for the most part, I feel like brands are going to have either like an N for neutral, or they'll have like a P or an R for pink or red, or they'll have like a Y or a W for warm or yellow. So look out for those things as well, because those are going to be like signs of whether it's pink, neutral, or warm. Sometimes like brands will go by like a number system. I'm not familiar with the number system, to be honest. I feel like most of the time brands are just gonna either have like the letter system, like the N, the R, the W, Y, like whatever. So if you're not really sure like what your undertone is just by looking at yourself in the mirror, just looking at like your skin, there's different ways that you can tell or that can help you identify like which undertone you have. So one way is that you can hold up like a white piece of paper to your skin, and by doing that, that'll make the color, like your undertone, a little bit more apparent. So like for me, like I'll hold this white piece of paper up, and I don't know if you can see on camera or not, but I am definitely a lot more like yellow than the white piece of paper. Or like my hand, I feel like my hand is more yellow than the paper. Now for me, I feel like I identify myself more with like a neutral undertone than a warm, because I feel like sometimes if I go with a warm, that looks too yellow on me. But I mean, I do have a couple warm undertone foundations and they look fine, so it probably just depends on the brand. But for the most part, I like to stick to more like a neutral undertone. So another thing that you can do is just check your wrist. So you'll just like look at the veins right here on your wrist area, and if you see more of like blue and purple veins, that's going to generally mean that you're going to probably be more of like a cool tone foundation shade. If they look more green, then you're more than likely going to be warmer. And then if you see like a mix of blue and green, then it's probably going to be more of like a neutral undertone. And then I'm sure you've heard of this one before, but you can always do the jewelry test as well. So typically gold jewelry is going to look best on warmer undertones, and then silver jewelry is going to look generally better on like cooler undertones. So keep in mind, like don't be biased on whether you like gold or silver. Just take a look at it on your skin and see if you feel like one looks better, or if like one kind of looks like it clashes a little bit with your skin. Then that'll be like another indicator too of, you know, what possibly your undertone could be. Okay, so then now that we got through the undertone part, and once you find out your undertone, then you can move into foundation and finding what foundation is best for you. Now, when you're trying to match to a foundation, the way that I would do it at Sephora and the way that I recommend doing it is making like a stripe from like your jawline area and bringing it down your neck a little bit, because then you can really ensure that the color is matching both your face and your neck. Now, I know people do like the whole like wrist thing and the hand, but your hand can be a different color than your face, and your wrist can also be a different color than your face. So I personally don't recommend doing the hand and wrist method. I always think it's best to do the face and neck, because then you're really ensuring that you're getting the correct color. Now, if you have discoloration, like if you have like acne or, you know, like rosacea or anything like that, that may be throwing the color off a little bit, you can always do other parts of the body too, which I have done on other people before, and you can pull your shirt down a little bit and you can do like your chest area, because that'll also help determine like your color as well, because it can match like your chest. So I have done that to other people before if we've had like a harder time, you know, doing it on the face and neck area. So as far as foundation, there are a bunch of different formulas and a bunch of different textures that are available out on the market. So I know that can be very overwhelming, but I'll go ahead and talk about each texture and like type of formula that's available out there. And I'll kind of like show you some examples of like what I have. I don't have like all of the different textures available, but I'll at least like show you some things that I do have that I'll talk about. So one formula foundation is going to be like a compact cushion foundation. So that's going to be good for more of a luminous finish for the most part. So if you're unaware of like what that is, that became really popular over in Korea. And it comes in like a little compact like this here. And when you open it, it's literally just like a little cushion like this, and it'll come with a little like sponge type of cushiony applicator that you just, you know, dip in here, and then you just pat it onto the skin. Now, I feel like they can look very natural on the skin. There's like drugstore options as well. This one's just a Lancome one. I know L'Oreal has one, I believe, that I haven't used it before, but I know that one's pretty popular. But that's one formula. Another one is going to be a pressed powder foundation, and that's going to be good for shine control and generally more of a matte finish. So I'm sure you know what a pressed powder foundation is, but it's just going to come in a little compact like this, and then just literally be a powder foundation, but just in a pressed formula. I personally like if somebody wants to do more of like a powder foundation, I personally always recommend the pressed powders, just because you can get a little bit more coverage out of these versus a loose, if that's something that you're looking for, and it's going to be less messy than a loose powder foundation. So then the next formula is going to be a liquid, pretty standard. Everybody knows a liquid foundation, but it's just going to be liquid like this. You've seen me use liquid foundations every single time I've done my makeup on my channel, so that one's pretty standard. But a liquid foundation is going to come in a wide variety of like finishes. Then you also have spray foundation. So a spray foundation is going to give more of like an airbrushed type of finish to the skin. So this is going to be an airbrush foundation. So it literally comes in like, if it can focus, like basically like a spray can. Like you shake it, it sounds just like, oh, the cap fell off, but it sounds just like a paint can. Comes in like a little spray top like this. And with these, I don't recommend spraying directly onto the skin because it can get a little messy. So you can either do it on the back of your hand, take your brush, swirl it around and put it on, or you can spray it directly on your brush, like bristles, and then buff it into the skin that way. But yeah, this can just help give like more of like that airbrush type of look to the skin. So another formula is going to be your CC creams and your BB creams, and these are going to be more lightweight and generally more of a natural hydrating finish. Now the difference between the two is that CC creams, CC stands for color correcting, so that's going to be more of like a color correcting cream. So if you have like any redness or anything like that, typically a CC cream is going to help neutralize that a little bit. And then BB cream, it's essentially the same thing, it just doesn't do any like color correcting, but they're just going to be very lightweight on the skin. And then you have a tinted moisturizer, so that's just going to be very lightweight in coverage, hydrating, and generally will contain an SPF. And then the next type of finish that there is are loose powder foundations. And I don't have like an example of that, which I'm sure you already know what a loose powder foundation is, but that is going to be, I've seen it in both, come in luminous finishes and matte finishes. So I mean, I'm sure you know what it is, but if you don't know what it is, it literally just looks like a loose translucent powder, but it's just like a foundation. And then the next one that there is are cream compact foundations. I don't have one of these either, but it just comes in like a compact, like the powdered one did, like the pressed powdered one, but it's just going to be more of like a cream foundation. And then this is going to most generally come more in like a natural finish. And with that, you'll just use either like a brush or like a little applicator for that. And then the next type of formula would be more like a stick foundation like this. So it literally is just like a stick of foundation. You just roll it up and it looks like this. And you just like swipe it onto the skin, take your brush or your beauty blender, and then you just buff it into the skin. Now with these, I feel like I've seen it come in satin, luminous, and I'm sure there's a matte finish one, if anything more of like a demi matte or like a natural matte finish. But these are super, quick and easy to use, not messy at all because you don't have to get the foundation on your hands. You just, swipe it on, blend it out really fast. So these are really nice too if you're looking for something that's like pretty quick. Okay, so then now that we got through the different foundation formulas, or different like textures, I guess you can say, the next thing that I'll cover is the coverage of foundation. Now I wanted to cover this because I'm sure if you're into makeup, you already know more about like coverage of foundation and like what the different coverages are. But I would have people who would come into Sephora and I would ask them, okay, what kind of coverage are you looking for in your foundation? And they would have no idea what I was talking about. So I figured I would go over it just in case you're new to makeup, or maybe you just don't really understand like the different, coverages of foundation that is available out there. So essentially when talking about coverage of foundation, that is just going to mean like how much of your skin that you want to cover. So there are sheer coverage foundations, and now with this, it looks very natural. It feels very lightweight on the skin. This is designed to even out minor imperfections with still allowing your skin to shine through. So you may cover like a little bit of like, if you have like freckles, you may cover a little bit or a little bit of a blemish, but it's not going to give you a ton of coverage. So you'll still have your natural skin for the most part still shining through the coverage of the foundation. And then with sheer coverage, it's just mainly to enhance your natural skin versus masking it with, a heavier coverage foundation. There's medium coverage foundation, and now with this is just going to cover more on your skin versus a sheer. Your natural skin won't be shining through as much, and then it'll just be a little bit more noticeable than like what a sheer coverage foundation would be. So you'll definitely be able to tell that you have something on covering your skin. And then there are full coverage foundations. Now with full coverage, that's going to be covering up everything. It's going to cover most generally a lot of your, if you have like hyperpigmentation or redness or acne, that is going to cover a lot of that. And with that, it's going to look a lot more noticeable on the skin. It doesn't necessarily mean that you'll look cakey, depending on how you apply it and the foundation that you use, but it's just going to be more noticeable, and you'll definitely be able to tell that you're wearing something versus something that's more like a sheer type of coverage. Now with more of full coverage foundations, it may feel a little bit more heavier on the skin. So if you're, not used to wearing full coverage foundations, you may be able to feel it a little bit more if maybe you're going from a sheer all the way to a full coverage. So that's something to keep in mind. And then also there's going to be sheer to medium coverage foundations. So that just means that you can build up the coverage, and then there's going to be medium to full coverage. So same thing as the sheer to medium, you just have the option to build up your desired coverage, which for me personally, I always recommend using a buildable type of foundation, whether it's sheer to medium or medium to full, just because you have the option of being able to build it up more when you feel like you need it or when you want to. So say maybe you like that sheer coverage foundation to be like your day-to-day, but maybe for like a special event, maybe like homecoming or prom or going out on a date or to dinner or something, then you can have the option to build it up to more of a medium. Same thing with medium to full. If you initially like having coverage to begin with, you can have the option to have that medium coverage, but when you feel like you need to have that extra coverage of maybe you have like a breakout or you're doing like some special event, then you can build it up more to a full. That's what I personally use, is more of like a medium to full coverage foundation, not necessarily because I need it, because I don't have like really any discoloration or anything like that on my skin. I just like that type of look. But I personally like to have the option to be able to build it up when I feel like I need to. All right, so then now that we got through that, now I'll go ahead and talk about the different foundation finishes. So the first one that I'll talk about is more of like a dewy and luminous finish foundation. So with this is just going to give you more glowing, youthful looking skin. It'll give more of a post-facial type of glow. And with this type of finish, people with drier skin and people with more mature skin without prominent wrinkles are going to suit best with more like a dewier foundation. And the purpose is because it reflects light, which softens the skin and creates more of a youthful glow. Now the downside to wearing more of like a luminous or dewy foundation is that it's not going to have a lot of lasting power throughout the day. And then you'll want to avoid it if you have more acne or deep set wrinkles, because dewy enhances the skin's radiance, which can draw attention to those different concerns. And then you'll want to avoid if you're oily, because it will enhance the oils that are on your skin. The next type of foundation finish is going to be a satin finish. So this is going to be an in-between of dewy and matte. So all skin types can wear a satin finish foundation. However, I would recommend that oilier skin types use more like a powder to set the foundation, just to help with oil control. Mature skin may suit this finish best because it won't like accentuate any like fine lines or wrinkles, because it's not too dewy and it's not too matte. It's that nice in between. And then you have your matte finish foundations. So this is going to have no shine to it whatsoever. It's going to tend to look drier and a little bit more flat on the skin, but it's also going to help reduce the appearance of pores, which makes it perfect for oilier skin types and combination skin types. Now, combination can be a little tricky sometimes, because there's combination that's leaning a little bit more towards oily in the T-zone and normal, and then there's combination dry. So you may be oily in your T-zone and get dry patches or very dry on your cheeks. So keep that in mind, because if you're more combination dry, really matte foundations may not work best for you, because it can, accentuate your dryness or be a little bit too dry on your skin. So then that's when you would go in and mix your primers. So you could use more of a mattifying primer in your T-zone if you feel like you need it, or really set with your powder in your T-zone, and then use more of a hydrating primer on your drier areas of the skin. Or if that doesn't work, then maybe like a matte foundation just isn't for you, but then that's when you can go towards more of the other finishes of foundation to help suit your dry skin, but then not be too dewy for your oily parts of your face. But then you can always go in with either like powders or like a mattifying like oil control primer in your T-zone if you're not using a mattifying foundation, if that makes sense. So like I said, combination can be a little tricky, so you just have to kind of watch it, and also keep in mind with the weather too, because if you live in a colder climate, it's drier outside, then a matte foundation may be a little bit too drying on the skin, depending on how oily you are. So the benefit to wearing a matte foundation is that it is going to last longer throughout the day. You'll want to avoid using a matte foundation if you have dry skin or more mature skin with wrinkles, because this type of formula, like I said, will cling to dry patches on the skin, and it'll also sink into fine lines and wrinkles, and then it'll just accentuate the problems even further and make them look a little worse, I feel like. Also with matte foundations, those are typically going to be full coverage, so keep that in mind as well. If you don't like full coverage, then maybe something that's mattifying may not be the best option for you. And then lastly, there are natural finish foundations. So this is going to look more skin-like, and it's going to give a little bit of a radiance to the skin without being dewy. And natural finish foundations are going to be great for dry skin types as well as more mature skin. Now, when I think of a natural finish foundation, I instantly think of this one from Bobbi Brown. It's going to be more of like a sheer to medium coverage foundation. And whenever more like mature skin women would come in and ask my help for a foundation and they wanted something that was a little bit more sheer, I would always take them to that one because it looks so beautiful on the skin. It doesn't sink into any fine lines or wrinkles or looks too heavy on the skin. That one sits very beautifully. So that's the one that I always think of, like whenever I think of a natural finish foundation, is this one from that Bobbi Brown makes. It sits wonderfully on the skin and great formula for mature skin as well. So yeah, that's about it. This video is like pretty relaxed. It's snowing outside right now. I'm looking right out my window and it's just snow everywhere on the roads. Disgusting. I hate it. We're about to get the big Arctic freeze to where it's going to feel like negative like 45 or like negative 32, something like that with the wind chill. So that is freezing. That never gets this cold here in Ohio, and I am not here for it. I'm not going to be leaving my house. So yeah, I'm not looking forward to it, but I'm just gonna go clean my house. I figured sit down, do something very casual with this no makeup look, toss my hair up, throw on something comfy. So if you have any questions, just let me know. I hope I answered them, and I hope it gives you a little bit of relief. I tried to explain it the best way that I can to make it easy and not as complicated as it seems like it is. I'll also list some different foundations down below of ones that I personally think are good as far as like for dewy or for like mattifying foundations or full coverage or sheer to medium or, you know, whatever. So take a look down below if you're interested in looking at different foundations, or, you know, if you don't know where to begin, then I'll list some good ones down there. So yeah, I will see you in my next one. Bye guys.